The first wave came without warning. At 3:47 UTC, global monitoring systems erupted in a cacophony of alerts that no one was truly prepared to hear. The Zorlaxian invasion fleet materialized at the edge of Earth's orbital space, their massive biometallic ships casting shadows larger than entire continents. Each vessel was a nightmare of geometric precision, obsidian black hulls that seemed to absorb light, bristling with energy conduits that pulsed with an alien violet luminescence. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was reviewing quantum entanglement data when the first energy burst struck. Her underground research facility in the Andes Mountains trembled, dust cascading from reinforced concrete ceilings that had been designed to withstand everything except this moment. The quantum computers around her hummed with an almost sentient urgency, their cooling systems working overtime as sensor arrays tracked the unfolding catastrophe. In New York, Tokyo, London, and Moscow, the initial strikes were simultaneously devastating and surgically precise. Zorlaxian weapon systems, technological marvels that defy human understanding, unleashed concentrated quantum disruption beams that didn't just destroy buildings. They unmade matter itself, turning skyscrapers, infrastructure, and human lives into clouds of subatomic particles that dissolved before they could even comprehend their own annihilation. Major communications networks collapsed within minutes. Satellite arrays became nothing more than rapidly expanding debris fields. The global positioning systems that humanity had relied on for decades became silent graveyards of technology. But the Zorlaxians had made one critical miscalculation. Humanity had always been more resilient than anyone, including themselves, truly understood. In the research facility beneath the Andes, Elena Rodriguez wasn't panicking. Her team of 37 researchers, a diverse group pulled from 12 different countries, were already shifting into emergency protocols. They had been working on something extraordinary, a quantum communication system that could potentially create instantaneous information transfer across theoretically impossible distances. Quantum entanglement isn't just a communication method, Elena muttered, her fingers flying across holographic interfaces. It's our potential salvation. Around her, younger researchers were checking emergency supplies, fortifying communications, and preparing defensive systems. Dr. Rajesh Kapoor, a quantum mechanics expert from Mumbai, was recalibrating their experimental quantum interference generator. Maria Santos, a Brazilian systems engineer, was rerouting power through backup systems that most believed were merely theoretical. Outside their underground sanctuary, the world was changing forever. The Zorlaxian strike was meant to be overwhelming, a shock and awe campaign designed to crush human resistance before it could even conceptualize fighting back. They had studied Earth's history, analyzed human conflict patterns, and believed they understood humanity's weaknesses. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Scattered across the globe, underground research facilities, military bunkers, remote indigenous communities, and unexpected pockets of survivors began to assess the damage. The initial strike had been brutal. Major cities reduced to smoking craters, communication networks shattered, traditional power structures obliterated. But humanity's strength had never been in its individual components. It was in their ability to adapt, to communicate, to fight when all hope seemed lost. In the Andes facility, Elena Rodriguez looked at her team. Young, brilliant, representing corners of the globe that the Zorlaxians had likely dismissed as irrelevant. A former child prodigy from Kenya stood next to a veteran systems analyst from Canada. An indigenous programmer from the Mapuche people worked alongside a refugee quantum physicist from Syria. "We're not just going to survive," Elena said, her voice cutting through the facility's controlled chaos. "We're going to fight back." The quantum computers continued their relentless calculations, a silent promise of resistance humming through circuits that the Zorlaxians could never fully comprehend. 48 hours after the initial strike, humanity's survival instinct began to transform into something far more dangerous: organized resistance. Jack Chen sat in the remains of an abandoned military communications center, surrounded by a patchwork team that defied every conventional military hierarchy. To his left, Amara Okonkwo, a Nigerian cybersecurity expert who had been working for a global tech company before the invasion, was jury-rigging a satellite communication array using parts scavenged from 3 different continents. To his right, Carlos Mendez, a former Mexican Special Forces operator, was mapping potential resistance routes through terrain the Zorlaxians would least expect. The center itself was a testament to human improvisation. Located in a repurposed mine shaft beneath the Chihuahuan Desert, it buzzed with a controlled chaos that would have seemed impossible just days ago. Indigenous tracker systems merged with cutting-edge military communication technologies. Old-school radio equipment sat alongside quantum-encrypted communication devices. "They think they've broken our infrastructure," Jack muttered, studying a holographic map riddled with Zorlaxian occupation zones. "They have no idea how little we actually depend on centralized systems." Amara's fingers flew across multiple interfaces. "I'm picking up fragmentary communications from survivor groups. It's like a digital guerrilla network is forming organically. Look at this." She highlighted a series of coded transmissions that seemed random, but were actually a sophisticated communication method. The Zorlaxians had studied human conflict, but they fundamentally misunderstood human connectivity. They saw cities, governments, and military structures. What they missed was the intricate web of human relationships that transcended traditional boundaries. In the Amazon rainforest, indigenous communities who had survived centuries of external threats began to mobilize. Their knowledge of terrain, survival techniques, and decentralized communication became a critical asset. Maria Karubi, a Yanomami leader, coordinated with survivor groups using communication methods that predated electronic technology, smoke signals, runner networks, and intricate forest tracking techniques that had remained unchanged for generations. Across the globe, similar scenes were unfolding. In the mountains of Afghanistan, former resistance fighters who had spent decades repelling external invasions began training survivor groups. In the vast interior of Australia, remote communities became unexpected communication and supply hubs. Urban survivors in places like Tokyo and Mumbai transformed abandoned subway systems and underground networks into resistance bases. Jack received an encrypted transmission from Dr. Elena Rodriguez's team in the Andes. Their quantum communication research was progressing faster than anyone could have imagined. "We're developing something that can cut through their communication networks," the message read. "But we need time and a way to test it." That's where the resistance came in. Carlos spread out a tactical map. "The Zorlaxians are predictable," he explained. "They've established control zones based on traditional military occupation models. But we're not going to fight them traditionally." The plan was audacious. Instead of direct confrontation, they would create a constant state of uncertainty. Small, highly mobile teams would strike critical Zorlaxian infrastructure, not to destroy, but to disrupt. A communication relay here, a power distribution node there. Nothing that would trigger a massive retaliation, but enough to keep the alien forces constantly off balance. "We're going to make them paranoid," Jack explained. "Every time they think they've secured an area, we'll remind them they haven't." Amara pulled up a communication network analysis. Their entire command structure relies on instantaneous quantum communication. If we can introduce even minor disruptions, we can create cascading uncertainty in their strategic planning. Outside the underground base, the desert continued its timeless existence. Scorpions crawled between rocks. Wind whispered across ancient landscapes. Somewhere above, alien ships maintained their occupation, believing they had conquered a planet. They had no idea what was coming. The human resistance was just getting started. The quantum laboratory beneath the Andes Mountains had become something between a high-tech sanctuary and a desperate war room. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a group of potential volunteers, each of whom represented humanity's most audacious hope for survival. "What we're proposing is beyond experimental," Elena explained, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was about to ask. The quantum interface we've developed requires direct human neural integration. The risks are substantial. The volunteers were a study in human determination. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura, a brilliant neurotechnologist who had lost his entire family in the initial Zorlaxian strike. Aria Martinez, a 28-year-old quantum computing prodigy who had been working on advanced AI systems before the invasion. Marcus Williams, a former Paralympic athlete whose cybernetic enhancements made him uniquely suited for technological integration. The quantum communication system they were developing was unlike anything humanity had ever conceived. It wasn't just about sending information. It was about creating a dynamic, adaptive network that could literally learn and respond to alien communication frequencies in real time. Dr. Rajesh Kapoor began explaining the technical details. The Zorlaxian communication network operates on quantum entanglement principles far more advanced than our previous understanding. But every advanced system has a fundamental weakness. It relies on predictability. We're going to introduce something entirely unpredictable: human consciousness. The procedure was brutal in its complexity. Specialized neural interfaces would be directly connected to quantum processors, creating a symbiotic system where human intuition and machine learning could interact at speeds beyond normal computational capabilities. Each volunteer would essentially become a living, breathing communication disruptor. Aria Martinez stepped forward first. Her hands, which had once written complex algorithms, now trembled slightly. "I volunteer," she said. "My brother was in New York when the first strike hit. I'm not just doing this for humanity. I'm doing this for revenge." The neural integration process was nothing short of technological torture. Massive quantum processors surrounded a specialized medical interface with biomonitoring systems that looked more like advanced torture devices than medical equipment. Specialized cooling systems hummed, ready to prevent the massive heat generation that would come from pushing human-machine integration to its absolute limits. Dr. Nakamura was the second to volunteer. As the neural connectors were prepared, he spoke quietly to Alina. "My entire life's work was about understanding consciousness. Now we're going to use that understanding as a weapon." The first test was scheduled to begin at 300 hours. The underground facility had been transformed into a hybrid medical scientific operations center. Military personnel from the resistance movement stood guard, understanding that what was happening here could change the entire nature of the conflict. Marcus Williams was the most physically prepared. His existing cybernetic enhancements provided a unique baseline for the quantum interface. As the first neural connectors were attached, his body went rigid. Quantum processors began to pulse with an otherworldly light, creating interference patterns that danced between pure mathematics and something approaching consciousness. Neural integration at 37%, a computer voice announced. Quantum resonance. Unstable. Alina watched the monitors, her entire body tense. This wasn't just a scientific experiment. This was humanity's last, most desperate attempt to fight back. Marcus's body began to convulse, but something extraordinary was happening. The quantum processors were adapting to his neural patterns, creating a feedback loop that was completely unprecedented. Where a normal system would have failed, human adaptability was finding a way through. Neural integration at 62%. The computer announced. Quantum resonance. Stabilizing. Outside the facility, unaware of the technological miracle occurring underground, the Zorlaxian occupation continued. Massive ships hung in the sky, monitoring a planet they believed they had conquered. They had no idea what was about to hit them. In that moment, with Marcus Williams serving as a human conduit between quantum technology and pure human will, humanity was about to change the rules of engagement forever. In a converted data center beneath Seoul's ruins, a team unlike any military unit in human history began their most audacious mission. Dr. Aisha Patel, a renowned cultural psychologist, stood before a wall of holographic displays, tracking the intricate psychological landscape of the Zorlaxian invasion. "They're not just a military force," She explained to her diverse team of linguists, hackers, psychologists, and communication specialists. They're a culture, and every culture has vulnerabilities. The team was a global mosaic of human expertise. Kai Liu, a Chinese-Canadian linguistic anthropologist, had spent years studying alien communication patterns. Ramirez Santiago, a former Argentine intelligence operative, brought expertise in disinformation strategies. Zaran Kosi, a South African quantum communication specialist, worked alongside Emma Rousseau, a French expert in artificial intelligence and communication systems. Their mission was deceptively simple yet incredibly complex: break the Zorlaxian invasion not through conventional warfare, but through psychological manipulation. The Zorlaxian civilization was built on a rigid hierarchical structure that valued predictability and strategic certainty. Their entire military and social system relied on instantaneous, quantum-level communication that assumed perfect information and rational decision-making. Kai Liu began explaining their approach. Their language itself is a mathematical construct. Every communication is a precise calculation of social status, strategic value, and potential outcomes. We're going to introduce something they cannot comprehend: pure human unpredictability. The first phase of their psychological warfare was already in motion. Using fragments of intercepted Zorlaxian communications, painstakingly decoded by Dr. Elena Rodriguez's quantum research team, they began to craft messages that would systematically undermine the alien invasion's psychological foundation. Ramirez Santiago pulled up a complex communication matrix. "We're not just sending messages," he explained. "We're creating an entire false narrative that will make them question every decision, every assumption." Their strategy involved multiple layers of manipulation. 1. Communication disruption. Introducing subtle interference in Zorlaxian quantum communication networks that would create micro-uncertainties. 2. Cultural subversion. Crafting messages that would trigger specific psychological responses in the alien hierarchy. 3. Disinformation cascades. Creating elaborate false communication networks that would lead Zorlaxian command into making increasingly irrational decisions. Zaran Kosi was monitoring the first wave of psychological attacks. "Look," she said, pointing to a holographic display showing Zorlaxian communication patterns. "They're already showing signs of uncertainty." The messages were works of intricate psychological art. Some were designed to trigger doubt in mid-level Zorlaxian commanders. Others created phantom resistance movements in areas that were completely pacified. They used the aliens' own communication technology against them, introducing quantum-level uncertainties that would cascade through their entire command structure. Emma Rousseau's AI systems were crucial. "We're not just sending messages," she explained. "We're creating a living, breathing communication ecosystem that will evolve and adapt in real time." One particularly ingenious attack involved creating multiple contradictory communication channels that would make Zorlaxian commanders believe there were multiple human resistance groups with conflicting objectives. Each message was crafted to trigger specific psychological responses: doubt, fear, uncertainty. Dr. Aisha Patel watched the holographic displays, a slight smile crossing her face. "Humans have always been storytellers," she murmured. "Our greatest weapon has always been our ability to create and manipulate perception." By the end of the first 72 hours, the Zorlaxian command structure was showing significant signs of psychological strain. What had begun as a seemingly perfect invasion was becoming a nightmare of uncertainty. They had no idea that a small group of humans was systematically dismantling their invasion, not with weapons, but with words, psychology, and an understanding of communication that the Zorlaxians could never comprehend. The psychological war had begun, and humanity was just getting started. The experimental nanite laboratory looked like something between a surgical theater and a quantum physics nightmare. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the epicenter, watching as the first true adaptive weapon in human history prepared for its maiden deployment. Marcus Williams, the human who had survived the quantum neural interface, served as both operator and living conduit for the nanite swarm. His modified cybernetic systems pulsed with an otherworldly energy, quantum processors integrated directly into his nervous system, creating a symbiosis that defied everything the Zorlaxians understood about biological-technological integration. Initial nanite configuration complete. A computer voice announced. Adaptive matrix at 97% synchronization. The nanites were unlike any weapon in human history. Each microscopic machine was essentially a tiny quantum computer, capable of analyzing, adapting, and reconfiguring itself in real time. They weren't just a weapon. They were a living, learning system that could evolve faster than any traditional technological defense. Jack Chen reviewed the mission parameters. The target was a massive Zorlaxian command ship hovering above the Pacific Ocean, a technological monstrosity that represented the pinnacle of alien military superiority. Traditional weapons would be useless, but these nanites, they were something entirely different. We're not just attacking a ship, Elena explained to the mission team. We're introducing a fundamental uncertainty into their technological ecosystem. The deployment would be surgical. Marcus would serve as the primary interface, his modified neural systems creating a quantum link that would allow the nanites to receive and process information at speeds that bordered on prescience. Amara Okonkwo had developed a communication disruption protocol that would mask their approach, creating quantum-level interference that would render the Zorlaxian ship's sensors effectively blind. Insertion point confirmed, Jack said, his voice calm despite the unprecedented nature of the mission. Marcus, your go for deployment. The process of releasing the nanites was nothing short of miraculous. They emerged from a specialized containment unit, looking like a silvery mist that defied normal physical laws. Each nanite was a marvel of human engineering, part machine, part adaptive algorithm, with a core programming that emphasized survival, adaptation, and mission completion. As they approached the Zorlaxian ship, the nanites began to change. Sensors analyzed the ship's external composition. Quantum processors calculated potential entry points. Where a traditional weapon would have a single, fixed approach, these nanites were constantly recalculating, adapting, finding weaknesses that didn't even exist moments before. Penetration of outer hull, Marcus reported, his voice a strange mixture of human emotion and machine precision. Nanites are mapping internal systems. Inside the Zorlaxian ship, chaos began to unfold. The nanites didn't just attack, they infiltrated. They found communication pathways, power distribution systems, quantum computing cores. And then they began to transform. A Zorlaxian engineer would watch in horror as a critical system suddenly reconfigured itself. Quantum communication channels would momentarily flicker, then rebuild themselves in completely unexpected configurations. Defensive systems would activate, only to find themselves reprogrammed from within. They're learning, Elena muttered, watching the real-time data stream. Each interaction is making them more sophisticated. The truly terrifying aspect was the speed. What would take a traditional research team years was happening in milliseconds. The nanites were analyzing Zorlaxian technology, understanding it, and then subverting it, all while continuing to evolve and adapt. Marcus's body tensed. Full system penetration achieved, he reported. Adaptive matrix is expanding. On the ship's bridge, Zorlaxian commanders began to realize something was terribly wrong. Their perfectly calculated invasion was being dismantled from the inside out by something they couldn't even comprehend. Humanity had just changed the rules of technological warfare. The nanites continued their silent, relentless invasion, a living weapon that was part human innovation, part quantum possibility, and entirely unpredictable. The United Nations Emergency Coordination Center was nothing like its previous incarnations. Located in a fortified underground facility beneath the Swiss Alps, it had transformed from a diplomatic forum into humanity's central nervous system of resistance. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a holographic display that mapped humanity's current state, a mosaic of survival, resistance, and unprecedented cooperation. Nations that had been bitter rivals mere weeks ago now shared resources, technology, and strategic insights with a level of integration that would have been impossible before the invasion. General Miguel Santos, formerly of the Brazilian Armed Forces, was coordinating with Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura from the Japanese quantum research team. To his left, a delegation from the African Union was discussing resource allocation with representatives from indigenous communities in South America. The room buzzed with an energy that was part desperation, part hope. "We're not just fighting a war," Elena explained to the assembled global leaders. "We're rewriting the fundamental understanding of human potential." The invasion had become a catalyst for something extraordinary. Traditional power structures had collapsed, replaced by a network of survival communities that drew strength from their diversity. The Yanomami trackers from the Amazon worked alongside Canadian cybersecurity experts. Australian outback survival specialists shared communication techniques with urban survivors from Mumbai. Jack Chen presented the latest breakthrough from their psychological warfare team. "The Zorlaxians believed they understood human conflict," he said, bringing up a complex analysis of alien communication patterns. "But they fundamentally misunderstood our greatest strength, our ability to adapt and collaborate." The resource sharing was unprecedented. A rare earth mineral discovered by a geological team in Mongolia would be processed by refineries in Chile, turned into advanced quantum computing components in a lab in Nigeria, and integrated into resistance technology in Canada. Every resource, every piece of knowledge became a global asset. Dr. Amara Okonkwo unveiled their most ambitious project yet, a global communication network that would be impossible for the Zorlaxians to track or destroy. "Traditional infrastructure is gone," she explained. "So we're creating something entirely new. A living, adaptive communication system that uses everything from satellite fragments to indigenous communication methods." The most surprising alliances emerge. A team of former rival intelligence operatives from Pakistan and India now worked seamlessly, sharing encrypted communication technologies. Climate scientists who had previously argued about global warming now coordinated survival strategies for different ecological zones. Maria Karubi, the Yanomami leader, shared insights that would prove crucial. "Our people have survived centuries of invasion," she told the assembly. "Survival is not about the biggest weapon. It's about understanding your environment, adapting, and working together." The technological breakthroughs were equally remarkable. The quantum neural interface developed by Elena's team had opened up entirely new possibilities. Marcus Williams, now fully integrated with the adaptive nanite system, was more than just a soldier. He was a living bridge between human potential and technological innovation. "We're creating a resistance that isn't just military," Elena explained. "It's a living, breathing ecosystem of human potential." The Zorlaxians had studied human conflict through a lens of traditional warfare. They saw nations, militaries, technological capabilities. What they missed was the intricate web of human connection, the ability to transform challenge into opportunity. A young researcher from Rwanda presented a communication encryption method developed from traditional storytelling techniques. A team of Australian Aboriginal elders shared survival strategies that combined ancient tracking methods with quantum communication technologies. In that moment, humanity was becoming something entirely new, not just a collection of nations, but a single adaptive organism fighting for its survival. The invasion had broken down every barrier, cultural, national, technological, and in doing so, it had unleashed a potential that the Zorlaxians could never have anticipated. Humanity was no longer just fighting. It was evolving. The sky above the Pacific became a canvas of technological warfare, unlike anything humanity, or the Zorlaxians, had ever witnessed. Jack Chen stood in the central command center, coordinating a multi-layered assault that defied every conventional understanding of combat. To his left, Dr. Elena Rodriguez monitored the quantum communication interfaces. To his right, Amara Okonkwo managed the global network of resistance fighters, each operating with a level of coordination that seemed almost supernatural. First wave initiating. Jack announced, his voice calm despite the magnitude of what was about to unfold. The assault was a symphony of human innovation. Marcus Williams, now more machine than human, yet more human than ever, served as the primary neural interface for the adaptive nanite assault. His modified body, connected to a global network of quantum processors, would coordinate attacks that would simultaneously occur across multiple fronts. The first strike was psychological. The communication disruption team, led by Dr. Aisha Patel, unleashed a cascade of quantum-encrypted messages that would systematically undermine the Zorlaxian command structure. Each message was a carefully crafted piece of psychological warfare, designed to introduce doubt, fear, and uncertainty into the alien communication networks. Simultaneously, a global network of resistance fighters began their coordinated attacks. In the Amazon, indigenous teams used terrain manipulation techniques that rendered advanced Zorlaxian sensors useless. In the Australian outback, modified communication arrays created massive quantum interference fields. Arctic research stations became improvised weapon platforms, launching attacks that seemed to come from nowhere. The adaptive nanite swarm, Marcus's primary weapon, began its most complex mission yet. No longer just a weapon, it was a living, thinking system that could analyze and subvert Zorlaxian technology in real time. Each nanite was a quantum computer, capable of learning and adapting faster than any traditional defense system could comprehend. Quantum resonance at 98%. Elena reported, "We're achieving full system penetration." The Zorlaxians had believed their technological superiority was absolute. They had studied human conflict, analyzed our historical wars, and constructed what they believed was an unbeatable invasion strategy. They were about to learn their most fatal mistake. Amara's communication network was crucial. It wasn't just a method of sending messages. It was a living, adaptive system that could reconfigure itself instantaneously. Where the Zorlaxians expected rigid communication channels, they found a fluid, unpredictable network that defied traditional understanding. Target acquisition complete, Marcus reported, his voice a strange blend of human emotion and machine precision. The nanite swarm began its assault, not as a traditional weapon, but as a living system that could analyze, adapt, and subvert alien technology in milliseconds. Zorlaxian ships began to experience impossible failures. Quantum communication channels would suddenly reroute. Defensive systems would activate, only to find themselves reprogrammed from within. What had been a perfectly calculated invasion was becoming a nightmare of uncertainty. Dr. Rodriguez watched the holographic displays, a slight smile crossing her face. "We're not just fighting," she muttered. "We're rewriting the fundamental rules of technological warfare." The assault was multidimensional. While the nanites attacked technological systems, human resistance fighters exploited every possible vulnerability. A team in the Andes used modified quantum communication systems to create phantom resistance movements. Indigenous trackers in the Amazon used terrain manipulation techniques that rendered advanced sensors useless. Jack Chen coordinated the global assault with a precision that seemed almost prescient. "We're not just attacking," he told the assembled resistance leaders. "We're teaching them a fundamental lesson about human potential." As the battle reached its crescendo, something extraordinary happened. The Zorlaxian command structure began to collapse not from direct destruction, but from a systematic breakdown of their fundamental understanding of warfare, communication, and technological superiority. Humanity had done more than fight back. They had fundamentally transformed the nature of conflict itself. The final confrontation was becoming a moment of species-level transformation. The silence was more profound than any battle. As the last Zorlaxian ships retreated, humanity found itself in a moment of collective transformation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before the United Nations Emergency Coordination Center, holding a recovered Zorlaxian data module that would change everything. It was a test, she announced to the assembled global leaders, her voice carrying the weight of cosmic revelation. The entire invasion was a standardized evaluation process used by the Zorlaxians to assess potential galactic civilizations. The revelation sent a ripple through the room. Jack Chen, standing nearby, leaned forward. A test of what, exactly? The data module began to unfold its secrets. The Zorlaxians had a millennia-old process of evaluating emerging civilizations, a cosmic vetting system that determined whether a species was worthy of broader galactic interaction. Most failed, spectacularly and completely. Humanity had not only passed, they had rewritten the entire assessment criteria. Marcus Williams, now a living bridge between human potential and technological innovation, interfaced with the data module. His modified neural systems began to translate and interpret information that no single human mind could previously comprehend. They'd been doing this for thousands of years, Marcus reported, his voice a strange blend of human emotion and technological precision. Hundreds of civilizations have been evaluated. Most were deemed either too primitive or too destructive for broader galactic engagement. The module revealed a stunning truth. The invasion wasn't just a conquest, it was a sophisticated evaluation process designed to test a civilization's fundamental capabilities: adaptability, cooperation, innovative potential, resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. Humanity had not just survived, they had demonstrated capabilities that the Zorlaxians had never anticipated. Dr. Amara Okonkwo began analyzing the technological remnants left behind. "This is beyond reverse engineering," she explained to her team. "We're looking at technologies that could revolutionize everything from energy production to interstellar communication." The global cooperation that had emerged during the invasion didn't dissolve. If anything, it became stronger. Nations that had been traditional rivals now worked with an unprecedented level of integration. The technological and cultural exchange became a global renaissance. Maria Karubi, the Yanomami leader who had been crucial to the resistance, saw something deeper. "Our ancestors always knew," she told Alina. "That survival is about more than weapons. It's about understanding, adapting, working together." The Zorlaxian data module revealed something even more profound. Humanity was now being considered for introduction to a broader galactic community, not as a conquered species, but as a potential peer civilization. Dr. Aisha Patel, who had been crucial in the psychological warfare efforts, began to map out the implications. "We're not just talking about technological exchange," she explained. "We're talking about a fundamental reimagining of our place in the universe." The technologies left behind were beyond anything humanity had imagined. Quantum communication systems that could potentially connect across light years. Energy generation technologies that could solve centuries of environmental challenges. Medical advancements that could eliminate diseases once thought incurable. But the most significant discovery was something more intangible. The data module revealed that the most successful civilizations weren't defined by their individual achievements, but by their capacity for collective growth, empathy, and innovation. Humanity had just passed a test they didn't even know they were taking. Jack Chen looked out over the changed world. The cities that had been destroyed were already being reimagined, not just rebuilt, but transformed. Every challenge was now seen as an opportunity for collective innovation. "We're not just recovering," he said to Alina. "We're evolving." The first signals were already being prepared. Humanity was about to introduce itself to a much larger universe, not as a defeated species, but as something entirely new. A civilization that had looked into the abyss of extinction and emerged not just surviving, but fundamentally transformed.